I've recently gotten quite a few people commenting, asking me to return here to do a camping trip here. And I figured, why not? What better place than to spend one of my evenings than a very scary forest that is known to be inhabited by skinwalkers? Couldn't think of anything I'd rather do than this. So here we are.
It was back in around March of 2010, and we're just a normal family, and my son was living with us at the time, and he came to me. He was a college student, and he lived upstairs, and he was telling me about how he had been hearing noises at night. Sometimes he would stay up really late at night while he was studying and working on his papers. And I asked him about the noises, and he said that it was like grunting and growling and a lot of brush moving and stuff like that, and he could hear it from his window up in his bedroom.
Across misted forests, shadowed creeks, and remote backroads, 7 chilling encounters reveal the unknown lurking in plain sight. From towering, hair-covered figures by foggy lakes to unseen watchers circling homes, each story weaves fear, mystery, and fleeting glimpses. Shadows and glowing eyes remind us that the wilderness holds secrets that watch, wait, and defy explanation. Meet Carrie and Greg, the witnesses behind the channel exposing the strange. This is the story of a family sharing an experience unlike any other. In March 2010, their quiet home became the stage for something strange. Their college-age son, living upstairs, started noticing strange, low sounds drifting from outside his window. Deep growls, soft grunts, and the subtle snap of twigs. At first, they were almost easy to dismiss, but gradually the noises sharpened, moving with a purpose, as though something unseen was circling closer in the darkness. One night, they realized they weren't just hearing the wilderness, they were being watched. What started as a normal evening soon became a confrontation with something far darker than they could have imagined.
It was back in around March of 2010, and we're just a normal family, and my son was living with us at the time, and he came to me. He was a college student, and he lived upstairs, and he was telling me about how he had been hearing noises at night. Sometimes he would stay up really late at night while he was studying and working on his papers. And I asked him about the noises, and he said that it was like grunting and growling and a lot of brush moving and stuff like that, and he could hear it from his window up in his bedroom.
Carrie stepped into the bamboo-thick corner of the yard, calling softly toward the faint whimpers. The air shifted. A cold tension ran down her spine. Suddenly, the bamboo exploded aside with a guttural, primal growl. Heart racing, she spun and ran, the sense of something unseen pressing close behind her.
It was a very secluded place. It had a lot of bamboo. I couldn't really see, where I heard that the whimpering was coming from. So I was kind of parting a little bit of the bamboo and saying things like, "Here, puppy, puppy, here, puppy, puppy." And then all of a sudden, it's like the whole feeling just changed, and it was like all the hair stood up on my body and the back of my neck, and so all of a sudden this crashing, whatever was in there started crashing through the bamboo, and I could see the bamboo moving, and it was let out this just god-awful growl, snarl kind of thing, and I turned around.
Raced toward the house, heart hammering, convinced she wouldn't make it. Every shadow seemed to reach for her, every rustle in the dark a predator closing in. Bursting through the door, she sank against the kitchen wall, trembling so violently she could barely breathe. Tears streamed freely, raw and unstoppable, as a wave of terror washed over her. Pure, unrelenting fear that left her frozen, and certain the nightmare wasn't over.
I thought that whatever it was big enough that I was going to be prey, and my husband was going to find the body when he came home, or maybe not find me at all. And I ran into the house, and I can remember I was so terrified that I literally sat down in the corner of my kitchen, and I was not going to come out. I sobbed. I cried harder than I've ever cried before, because I was just I was terrified. I was scared.
It shot beneath the porch in an instant. She and her son froze, eyes locking in disbelief. Then, barely 2 feet above her head, a low, bone-rattling growl rolled through the air. Raw, deep, and impossibly close. Fear paralyzed them. They dashed inside, but outside, the nightmare had multiplied. More than one creature prowled, snarling and howling, circling the house like predators marking their territory. In that moment, Carrie understood the terrifying truth. They weren't just being watched, they were trapped, and whatever was out there was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined.
Me and my son looked at each other like, what the heck was that about? And right at that point, probably about 2 feet over my head was all of a sudden this really low growl. I have never heard a growl like that, especially one coming so far over my head. And we just looked at each other, even though we both had shotguns in our hands, and we just ran into the house. And once we got into the house, it was like all broke loose out here. Like there were 2 or 3 of them out here. They were howling, they were snarling, we could hear them. And then I realized that we had a problem.
The first photo nearly got deleted, dismissed as nothing. But then those eyes appeared. 2 glowing orbs atop the chicken coop, silently tracking every movement of her husband just inches away. The next shot made the danger undeniable. As he stepped back, the eyes lifted, watching with a chilling, deliberate intelligence. In that moment, it hit. Something unseen had been there all along, aware, patient, and far closer than anyone could have imagined. And the realization sent a cold, creeping terror through the house.
But the first picture I had, I almost deleted because I didn't really know it was really anything. And it showed like these 2, I want to say eyes. There were 2 eyes up on top. And my husband was coming and putting the chickens up. So he was like walking next to it. And so he put the chickens up. And then the next picture was really what caught my eye, because it made me realize, hey, we've got something here. And you could tell that when he walked away, so you can see him in the picture, you can see him walking away from where he was just at, and whatever it was, the eyes that were watching him from on top of the chicken coop, all of a sudden had lifted their heads up like they were watching him walk away.
Even in Hawking Hills, the strange presence followed them. They had sought refuge in a camper, hoping for a quiet escape. Yet the encounters still came, sudden and unsettling. Some believe these beings communicate, coordinating from a distance. Perhaps the ones in the hills had simply noticed them, curious and deliberate. The first experiences had been pure terror, every sound and shadow amplified by the unknown. Over time, the fear didn't vanish, but they learned to navigate it, moving carefully through the woods with a heightened awareness that something unseen was always watching.
We did have a couple encounters in Hocking Hills, though, which was very weird because we had gotten a camper in Hocking Hills so that we could get away from these things. And then we had 2 encounters there. So, what's up with that? I've heard from doing the research that they talk to each other and they communicate with each other. And they were like, maybe the ones in Hocking Hill were like, oh, that's Carrie and Greg. Let's just kind of say hi. I don't know. But I do know in the beginning it was really scary. Now it's still scary, but we've kind of learned to live with it.
After everything, the growls in the bamboo, the creatures circling the porch, the glowing eyes watching from the coop, and the encounters in Hawking Hills, one terrifying thought remains. If they can observe without being seen, how close might something be right now, silently tracking us just beyond the edge of the light? Meet Dan, the fearless host behind the YouTube channel Cursed Urban. Renowned for his daring explorations of haunted sites and cryptid hotspots, he doesn't terrified away from the unknown. Tonight, he ventures into the heart of the Midwest's infamous Skinwalker Forest, a place thick with chilling legends and sightings of violent, elusive creatures. His goal? To camp overnight and capture undeniable proof of the paranormal. But as darkness settles over the trees, Dan is about to encounter a terror far more immediate and far more real than any story could prepare him for.
I've recently gotten quite a few people commenting, asking me to return here to do a camping trip here. And I figured, why not? What better place than to spend one of my evenings than a very scary forest that is known to be inhabited by skinwalkers? Couldn't think of anything I'd rather do than this. So here we are. But to be real, guys, this is one of my favorite places to camp, just because we always get something crazy whenever we come out here. So yeah, I enjoy it out here. I really do. It's great scenery. It's great investigating, and I hope one of these days we will capture Skinwalker on camera. Will it be tonight? Maybe.
The area near the water naturally draws attention. Creatures of all kinds are often found where life gathers. Staying close to the stream increases the chance of witnessing something unusual, as if the forest itself is quietly watching. In places like this, the unknown feels just a little closer.
Stick around this area just because there is water here for, there is a water source. Water sources attract creatures of all sorts. So I try and stick around these because there's a higher chance of hopefully spotting something here by a water source than, not by a water source. If that makes sense. I'm sure that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
During the early search around the campsite, only the weak glow of the lantern illuminated the immediate surroundings. Calls into the darkness went unanswered, the forest holding its silence like a secret. Then, without warning, that quiet shattered. A sudden, sharp noise erupted from the direction of the camp, once, then again, deliberate and unnatural. Instinct screamed danger, and he hurried back to the tent, every step weighted with tension, a stark reminder that whatever lurked here was closer than he ever imagined.
I just heard something whistling down the trail. Really far away. It could have just been somebody. It could have been somebody where I came from. Caroline. Yeah, it could have been someone where I came from. But I definitely heard whistling coming from the trail. Actually,
the forest held its breath. A faint, unplaceable sound drifted through the trees, sharp yet distant like a warning. Something, or someone, watched from the shadows, unseen but unmistakable. Each crack of a branch, each whisper of leaves, felt intentional, as if the woods themselves were alive, guarding a secret it had no intention of revealing.
They are watching you. Who was they? Who was watching me? Who was that? Or what was that I just heard?
A sudden instinct urged retreat. The air itself felt alive with unseen watchers. The forest seemed to shift around them. A soft, precise landing disturbed the underbrush, followed by a strange, eerie hiss that echoed between the trees. Every sound felt deliberate, as if the shadows were moving with intention, daring anyone to linger long enough to uncover their presence.
Dude, that was the weirdest thing ever. I've never encountered anything like that before. It was just like, okay. It was like something, it sounded like something jumped and landed very quietly, but still enough to like disturb the like the trees and stuff, and then it started making like this weird like squeaking, like hissing type noise. I hope you can hear.
Something lurked in the darkness, just beyond the trail, its presence impossible to ignore. A flash of movement, or were those eyes, glimmered among the trees, watching, calculating. Every instinct screamed alert. Something was studying them from the shadows, patient, silent, and unnervingly aware of every step.
I think I just saw eyes too. Right side of the trail back there, where it goes around. I think I just saw eyes in the trees. Dude, I swear there's something looking at me back there.
A faint crunch of steps circled the campsite, slow and deliberate, echoing the eerie rhythm from the trail moments before. It was as if something unseen was tracking every movement, moving with uncanny precision, never revealing itself yet, making its presence undeniably known. The forest seemed to breathe around them.
Walking sounds around the entire campsite. And it sounded exactly like when I was just on that last path and I said something was following me. That's to the T what it sounded like.
This chilling experience went beyond cryptids or legends, revealing that the most real danger can come from human intent. The forest shadows held more than just mystery, and the encounter served as a stark reminder. Sometimes, the true terror isn't supernatural, it walks on two legs. On Grey Watman, some of the most unsettling encounters begin as distant childhood memories, moments that seemed harmless at the time, but feel far more disturbing when remembered years later. In this account, the witness recalls a cold afternoon in early March, when at around 11 years old, he and several younger relatives and friends gathered inside a half-built chicken coop, passing time by sharing a single kite in the chilly air. As they finally began pulling the kite back in to escape the cold, one child suddenly noticed a massive figure standing quietly down the road, watching them. When the others turned to look, they realized the silent observer towering there was far larger than any ordinary person, and the uneasy feeling that followed would stay with them long after that day.
We were out in our chicken coop that wasn't quite finished, so the windows were open. And we were playing in there. It was kind of cold. It was in March. And we're flying a kite, and we only had one kite, so we were all huddled around this one kite. And we let it out as far as it could go, and then as we were reeling it back in because we started to get cold, one of the kids, he looked this way. He looked down the road, and he said, who's that guy watching us over there? And we all looked, and we were like, we didn't know who it was, but whoever it was, he was really big. He was taller than our little fence pole, came up to him.
The figure itself was deeply unsettling. Its body appeared thick with hair, and its head seemed to sit almost directly on its shoulders, giving it an unusually short neck. Long arms hung low at its sides as it stood there silently watching, occasionally leaning forward before straightening again. As the children hurried to pull their kite back in, light snow began drifting down, slowly dusting the figure until its dark form faded into a ghostly gray. Then, one of the boys suddenly decided to run for help. But in that brief moment, the towering watcher turned and vanished into the trees, disappearing almost instantly.
He looked kind of hairy. He had no neck. His neck was really short like that. And he seemed like he had really long arms. Because he would stand there and watch us, and every now and then he'd lean over like this. And then he'd stand back up and watch us some more. And we were frantically winding in our kite, and we wouldn't let it go. And then it started to snow a little bit. And as it got more and more snow, his coloring, it became gray from the snow. But he stood there, and then finally one of my little brothers, he said, I'm going to go tell Dad. So he ran out of the door and was heading around the corner, and within that split second, it was gone. It ran into the trees.
Years later, when the witness was asked if the towering presence might have been a Sasquatch, the answer was unexpected. At the time, none of the children had ever heard of Bigfoot or anything like it. The only frightening figures they knew came from the kinds of stories adults use to keep kids in line: shadowy monsters and the dreaded boogeyman whispered about after dark. With no legend to connect it to and no explanation that made sense, the strange watcher remained nameless in their minds. All they could call it was the massive dark figure that had stood silently down the road, watching them from a distance.
Did you think it was a Sasquatch or
well,
one of these characters?
We've never heard of Bigfoot or
Never heard of
Sasquatch. We've heard of the boogeyman and the Earthsea, the monster. And, you know, our parents scared us with those mythical creatures. But we never heard of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and we called it the Big Black.
As sightings grew more frequent over the years, one of the most chilling came from the witness's brother, Ed. Riding through a remote area called Coyote Basin at dusk, rifle on his back, he decided to check one last spot beyond a ridge. The moment he and his horse crested it, the horse froze, ears snapping forward, sensing something unseen. Everything after that happened so fast, yet so surreal, that Ed later said it felt like time itself had slowed.
The sighting that I'm going to tell you about now was my brother Ed. He was up in an area we call Coyote Basin, and he was hunting on his horse. He had a rifle on his back, and he was hunting. And it was getting dusk, and he was going to head home. Then he decided, well, I'm going to try one more place to see if I can find something. And so he goes over this ridge, and he said everything happened like in a split second. It was like slow motion, he said. And what happened was him and his horse came over the ridge, and he said he saw the horse's ears go like that, and it just stopped.
As they exchanged uneasy glances, their eyes caught a massive figure at the bottom of the slope, crouched and feeding on the ground. It lifted its head, fixing them with a cold, piercing stare. In an instant, it leaped on all fours, covering half the hillside in just a few powerful bounds.
They all looked at each other, and at the very bottom, way down there was this Bigfoot sitting down there, and he was eating something like that. And he was eating some off the ground, and then he looked up at him like that. And he said the look that that Bigfoot gave them was the look of murder. That's how he described it to me. And he said that thing just came up on all fours, like just leaped. He said like within 4 leaps, he was already halfway up, just boom, boom, boom.
Years later, one of the most haunting memories came from the witness's niece, George, while stepping outside to discard some dishwater and something enormous moving near it. A hulking, shadowy figure was hunched over the trash, making strange, wet noises as it fed. When it suddenly lifted its head and their eyes met, fear froze her in place. She bolted back inside, water splashing around her feet, while the air outside reeked of a foul, unearthly stench that lingered long after the creature had vanished. On Mysteries Unknown, some of the most chilling stories begin with someone who never believed in the unexplained. Hannah, a quiet resident who had lived in the Johnson County area for nearly 7 years, was always practical and skeptical about stories of strange creatures and hidden mysteries. Legendary creatures or other cryptids seemed like nothing more than tall tales to her, misidentifications, hoaxes, or people letting their imaginations run wild. But that confidence in simple explanations slowly unraveled after a moment she never expected. An encounter that forced Hannah to confront something she once believed could never be real.
I'm Hannah, and I've been in the Johnson County area for about 6-7 years now. I never really believed, in a sense, the unknown things that everybody talks about, like Bigfoot. I always thought it was a really tall man in a costume. And cryptics, I just thought it was people just hallucinating, being crazy, just making up stories. And I guess that all really changed once I saw what I did and had my own encounter for myself.
As the group drove deeper into the darkness, their car moved through the road, leading them to an old iron bridge that seemed to emerge suddenly from the night. Sean, their friend from Oklahoma who was driving, filled the uneasy silence with eerie music, turning the ride strangely unsettling. As the car crossed the creaking bridge and the back windows rolled down, Hannah glanced through the rear glass, only to catch a glimpse of something in the darkness behind them. Whatever she saw sent a shock of fear through her, and she immediately dropped to the floor of the car, covering her head as panic and tears took over.
We had came across the bridge, the old iron bridge, and I knew that the old iron bridge was coming up, but it was so dark outside, it was almost like it just popped out of nowhere. And our friend Sean, who was driving, who's the one from Oklahoma, decided he was going to play creepy music like Jeepers Creepers and Tiptoe Through the Window on the way up to the drive up there. Well, as we were going across the bridge, he rolled down the back windows, and I remember looking through the back glass, turning my head, looking through the back glass, and that's when I saw what I saw. And I jumped down into the floorboard, covered my head, and I started crying.
The car pushed farther into the winding mountain road, but Hannah couldn't stop glancing behind them. Each time she looked back, the same shadowy figure was still there, keeping pace with the vehicle with unsettling ease. What disturbed her most was the way it moved, sometimes charging forward on all fours, then suddenly rising upright and continuing the chase. When it stood on two legs, its height became impossible to ignore, a towering shape that looked far too tall to be anything ordinary, easily reaching somewhere around 6.5 to 7 feet.
Well, we kept going up into the mountains for about a good 10-15 minutes more, and I just kept looking back, and it was there. It kept following the car. We were going about 30, 45 miles an hour, so whatever it was able to keep up with us really, really easy. It didn't look like it was struggling. And one thing I noticed is it would switch from being on all fours and running to on its hind legs and running. And when it was standing up on its hind legs, from a distance it looked really tall. So I want to say it was 6.5, maybe 7 feet tall, because it was really...
Later that summer, during the 4th of July holiday, Hannah's uncle arrived from South Dakota for a visit. He had always been drawn to the wilderness, spending long stretches in the woods building shelters, exploring remote areas, and living comfortably far from the noise of town. One quiet night, the two sat out on the porch as Hannah finally shared the unsettling story of what she had seen near the old iron bridge. Rather than brushing it off, her uncle listened closely before admitting that her account reminded him of something he had once experienced himself near Hall Creek Camp, not far from that same area. He avoided describing the encounter in detail, but he hinted that whatever roams those woods might be what some locals whisper about as the Midnight Howler, known in darker legends as the Dogman.
Fast forward to July, my uncle had came down from South Dakota for the 4th of July, and I know he had some previous encounters and all that. He was all the time going out into the woods, building huts, doing outdoors things. Well, I talked to him about it, and we sat out on the porch till about 6 a.m. that morning talking about it. And he told me he had a similar experience at the Hall Creek camp, which is not very far from the old iron bridge. And he wouldn't go into detail to me about what he had saw, but he said that he really thought that it was the Midnight Howler or the Dogman.
As they neared the old bridge, Hannah noticed nothing unusual until they had fully crossed it, Around the bend, a dark figure emerged from the hillside and began following the car, keeping pace with eerie ease. But halfway back across the bridge, a glance behind revealed it was gone, vanished as suddenly as it appeared.
Across the bridge, and when we were coming across this little slight turn right there, that's when I had looked back, and it looked like it was coming down from up there. It wasn't like it just spawned out of nowhere. It was like it had came down, and then it started following us. And it followed us for about a good 10, 15 minutes. And then when we had finally turned around and we were coming back out of the mountains, I looked back. When we were about halfway across the bridge, I looked back, and it was gone.
Standing just down the road from where the encounter had unfolded, Hannah felt a surprising sense of calm. The area still carried a subtle weight, but it lacked the intense tension that had gripped her at the bridge. Though only minutes apart, the memory of that night seemed more distant here, replaced by a quiet clarity that made the place feel strangely less threatening. Under the cloak of night, exploring with Bear leads Jar into a forest that has long whispered legends. This is a place where shadows seem to move on their own and distant calls pierce the silence. Sounds that some claim belong to the elusive Grassman. For the next few nights, Jar will navigate hidden trails and listen for anything unusual, aware that at any moment, the forest itself might announce the presence of a creature that has eluded humanity for generations.
This is a known Bigfoot hotspot where researchers from all over the world gather to go over their findings and to hope to get a glimpse for the big man himself. Now around here, he is known as the Grassman, aka Bigfoot my boy. So I will be here for the next couple nights. I'm going to do Bigfoot knocks, Bigfoot whoops. We're going to film walking the trails and hope to catch a glimpse of the big man ourselves. Maybe hear a whoop, maybe hear a knock. Now the place that I'm camping at today is notorious for hearing.
In the shadowed clearing, he halts, struck by something enormous looming just beyond the trees. Its form, aged and weathered, carries the weight of countless unseen years, hinting at a presence both ancient and untamed. The forest feels alive, every rustle and snap magnified in the silence. A sharp, piercing whoop cuts through the wilderness, raw, primal, and impossibly close, making every nerve on edge. For a moment, the world holds its breath, as if the forest itself is watching, waiting to reveal more of its elusive inhabitant.
Ooh. Boy, that's big. Look how big that is. That's really, really big. It's old though, so it's not defined, but it is big, look. And it still goes. Whoop.
At the edge of the mountains, the forest stretches dense and shadowed, each tree hiding secrets in its thick undergrowth. Something large moves just beyond sight, slipping between shadows before it can be fully seen. The camera lens catches fleeting shapes, distorted and shifting, teasing glimpses of a presence both elusive and powerful. Every rustle and sway seems intentional, as if the forest itself is guarding a mystery that refuses to be revealed.
I just seen something moving right back there. Big. Watch for movement. Where'd you go? What were you? Nope, too far. It was more. Once you zoom, it changes a lot for me. Dang it, I don't know where it was now. Looking in the camera, I know with my eyes, it was like right back there.
Alone by the campfire, the sizzling steaks fill the night air with a rich, mouth-watering aroma. Every flip and pop feels comforting, a small moment of normalcy in the vast wilderness. Then, A sharp knock reverberates from the shadows behind him. Fumbling for a flashlight, smoke and darkness blur the edges of the clearing. Another sound, a sudden raw whoop, cuts through the night, sending a surge of tension that makes the forest feel alive, watching, and impossibly close.
Check that out. That is gonna be good. Oh!
That was a knock.
Hold on. Hold on, I need to get a flashlight. Oh, come on. It's not working? So much smoke, I still can't see. Whoop! Oh man, let me get this light out of my face. I can't see crap. That came from straight back there. Whoop!
That is awesome. That for sure was a knock.
A dense, rolling mist engulfed the campsite, curling around the tent and muting every sound of the forest. The weak glow of the camera barely pierced the haze, leaving shapes and shadows half-formed and menacing. Something moved just beyond sight, a fleeting shimmer, like a pair of eyes reflecting in the gloom. Every instinct screamed to retreat. The trail ahead felt unpredictable, alive, and deeply unsettling.
That's crazy, man. This don't feel right. Ooh. Heck no. Is that eyeballs? That is crazy. No way am I going down that trail now. No freaking way.
The night air grew heavier, charged with a presence that made every rustle and shadow feel threatening. Something moved in the darkness, unnatural, fleeting, and impossible to identify. The unease twisted into fear, sharp and undeniable. Instincts screamed to abandon the open and seek shelter, and the safety of the tent suddenly became the only sensible refuge. After nights of shadowed trails, fleeting shapes, eerie whoops, and unseen eyes watching from the mist, the forest still holds its secrets close. Was it just imagination? Or did something truly ancient and untamed move among the trees? The question lingers, will anyone ever uncover the Grassman, or is he destined to remain a whisper in the wilderness? In the shadowed forests of western Washington, where every rustle and ripple fuels old legends, Nikia prowls the line between curiosity and disbelief. On his Search and Survival series, he presses locals for their own brush with the unknown stories. And recently, he met Oscar Bauman, president of the Oregon Grotto, whose tale was equal parts eerie and convincing. He knows he hasn't seen Sasquatch himself, yet like glimpsing a ghostly cougar among the trees, he can't deny that some mysteries refuse to be written off until you confront them in the wild.
I'm Nikia. One of the things I like to do when I'm talking with people is ask them if they've seen Sasquatch or Bigfoot. There's just so much lore here in Western Washington and well, all over the country, but especially here in Washington. So a lot of people have stories. And one of the people I recently asked was Oscar Bauman, who is the president of the Oregon Grotto. And I was surprised, but he had a story for me.
Bauman had always moved carefully in the wilderness, but nothing had prepared him for this. Up a lonely stretch of road, a towering, hair-covered shape appeared in the distance. Walking on two legs, silent yet unmistakable. His instincts screamed caution. He pressed close to the roadside, weaving through shadows, careful not to startle it, desperate for a better look, yet unwilling to risk the unknown. Every step was measured, every rustle amplified, as the mysterious figure led him deeper into the forest's quiet tension, leaving him both terrified and enthralled.
Done that with a bear, and all I saw was a black blob. So when I saw what could have been Sasquatch, I didn't even have time to do any of that. I was like, ugh, I don't want the flash going off. I don't want to arise, because I was following it up the road. And I was like, just how you can keep tangents where if it turns around, you can step to the side and it's out of the line of sight. Because that's how scared I was. But I wanted to get closer to confirm what it was, because I couldn't. It was something hairy walking on two legs a quarter mile ahead of me on a road, and I didn't want to get any closer than that.
As dusk settled over the forest, Bauman wandered alone along the winding road, the air thick with mist and the hush of early evening. Out of the corner of his eye, a figure appeared ahead. At first human, but then unmistakably something else. Massive, upright, and cloaked in hair. He considered capturing it, but even the best camera would fail to reach that distance, and any sudden flash might scare it off. Or worse. Heart racing, he edged closer, every step measured, until the darkness and the weight of the unknown told him some encounters were meant to be observed from afar.
Nothing else going on, so I'll just be out here. I had my rain gear, and so I'm walking up this road, and I see, is there a guy walking up me? Well, maybe I'll get a little closer. I don't think that's a guy. That's something hairy. And it was about 5 o'clock in the fall, so it's getting dark. So I had my camera, but a quarter mile away, your camera's not going to get anything, because I'm kind of a professional photographer. I just know what the camera's capable of, and it's not capable of that. And so I'm like, I don't want the flash going off. The flash is not going to help a quarter mile away. So I just tried to get closer, and finally I just was 5 miles up in the sticks.
The figure was impossible to classify, neither fully human nor entirely a myth, but its presence was undeniable. While exploring a moss-covered cave floor, a huge, undefined footprint caught attention, and movement at the edge of vision hinted at something just beyond perception. By the time focus returned, the shape had vanished, leaving only the echo of its passage. The size of the print and the fleeting awareness of being watched made one thing certain: the forest holds secrets that refuse to reveal themselves fully.
I can't say it was Sasquatch, but I can't say it wasn't. It was or wasn't. It was something tall, hairy, walking. That's the only way I can explain it. So, and then another time I was out caving, and I'm looking at what I think is a print in the moss, and out the corner of my eye, something's standing. And by the time I turn around, it's not there. And I'm like, what was that? It's like, you know there's something standing behind you, but you can't turn fast enough to see what it is. But the print I was looking at was definitely something big, but in moss you can't see the texture of what it was. And like, yeah, I'm out of here.
Nakia listened as Bauman described a fleeting figure in the forest, something tall, covered in hair, moving just out of reach. He spoke of the legends that fill these woods and the strange weight they carry, even without proof. For Nakia, the story was a reminder that some mysteries can't be captured on film. They exist in moments that thrill, unsettle, and linger long after the sighting.
And maybe it was. But there are all these fun stories and myths and legends, and it's hard to believe if there was really a Bigfoot or Sasquatch that people wouldn't capture it on camera. But it sure is fun to listen to the stories and hear what people say.
On Travel Channel, every journey tells a story, and this one is deeply personal. Michael Freeman ventures into the wilderness, following the footsteps of his father, Paul Freeman, whose life changed forever in 1982. That first encounter with a legendary creature sparked a 15-year obsession. Now, Michael retraces the same rugged terrain, asking the question that started it all. What truly happened here? And is it still out there? Paul Freeman spent long stretches in these woods, convinced the land itself whispered secrets.
My name is Michael Freeman. Paul Freeman is my dad. In 1982, that's when he had his first encounter with Bigfoot. And that kind of set off a 15-year obsession, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, go around this bush here, see what's going on here.
Each trip revealed new clues, fresh imprints, unusual traces, signs of deliberate movement. He filmed every discovery, building a growing archive of unanswered questions. Yet the source remained elusive. Clear signs appeared, then silence. Whatever lurked seemed to watch from just beyond view.
Now, Deduck Spring, where this video was taken, was one of the viable water sources that was still being used by animals.
Sometimes they come here and get water.
My dad, knowing this, had been going up to that area for a couple weeks, actually, and he was finding footprint tracks up there, hair samples. He had been taking his camera. He was filming the collection of evidence.
Wow, looks like he's pretty fresh.
He would find stuff, but he would never have any sightings. And he would go back, the next day or the day after, and the same thing would happen over and over.
Yeah, he's went back up the road, come down the road.
Paranormal researcher Rosemary Ellen Guiley notes that Paul Freeman's legacy comes from evidence that could be examined, not debated. The footprint casts he recovered showed fine ridge patterns.
The valuable thing that Paul Freeman contributed to the field really came from his casts of footprint, and they have been examined by experts. He was able to capture what are called dermal ridges in his casts. This is an indication of striations in the skin.
Can't see much up through here. I hear the brush popping and stuff. Oh, there he goes.
Consistent with skin texture, setting them apart from ordinary tracks. Following the trail deeper, Freeman documented every step, the footprints leading him from certainty toward the unknown. He had seen strange things before, but nothing like this night. As darkness fell, Paul Freeman pushed deeper, following sounds that felt deliberate. These woods held a long history of mystery, and now they seemed anything but empty. Whatever moved beyond the brush did so with purpose, turning a routine investigation into a moment that would haunt him long after he returned.
He was pale in color. You could tell that something had upset him and something had bothered him.
Oh, God.
It's the only time in my life, including the day that he died, that I ever saw my dad scared of anything. And that right there, to me, I don't have to see one. That's the only proof I'll ever need for the existence of this animal, just knowing my dad and how that affected him.
The figure moved with fluid, instinctive grace. Nothing stiff, nothing forced. Its size and proportions were disturbingly consistent, impossible to fake. Later, those closest to Paul spoke not of what he saw, but how it changed him. A man known for strength and fearlessness, someone untouchable to his son, was left visibly shaken. For the family, that reaction mattered more than any photo or footage.
People can be skeptical, but you cannot deny the impact that these sightings have had on the people who saw the activity.
What can you say? Your dad comes home and he's got something like this on video, and you watch it and you rewatch it and then you watch it again and you say, well, that's not a bear. It's not a man. It's nothing I've ever seen. And yeah, it was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Oh, there he goes.
Whatever Paul encountered broke the image of invincibility, and that was proof enough. In the shadows, something moves. Tall, upright, impossibly still. Its coat is thick and wild, unlike any known animal. The camera rises slowly, revealing a presence that seems aware of its observer. A head shifts with quiet intention. Every subtle movement hints at intelligence, patience, and a power beyond comprehension. Alive, watching, refusing to reveal itself fully.
This is probably the most dynamic Bigfoot footage that I've ever seen.
The movements of this creature look very natural.
Doesn't look like a man in a suit. The height looks right, the weight looks right. I feel like this would be difficult for a man to hoax all on his own and the word not get out.
Oh, God. hear my heart beating 40 miles an hour.
I believe that he saw Bigfoot. I know my dad. I grew up with my dad. I know what kind of person he is.
The figure had the unmistakable hallmarks of Bigfoot. Towering, primate-like, with a broad, dome-shaped head and massive frame. Beneath the dense fur, a lighter area hinted at a bare chest or hands held before it, adding an uncanny awareness to the encounter. The evidence was undeniable. Not a hoax, not a story from the past. Something still moves through these mountains.
She frightened my dad, who I saw as being Superman, basically. You know, growing up, big guy, tough guy, brave guy, someone who wasn't afraid of any man or beast, you know, on this earth. To actually be rattled and scared by something, I don't need any more proof than that.
Gotta be tracks here somewhere in this road. Oh, here's one.
For somebody to devote their whole life to a field like Bigfoot searching and squatching, to finally get something on camera is a huge deal.
Yeah, they've been all over this in here.
An elusive presence known only as Bigfoot. Witnessing it, even briefly, changes everything, leaving a mark that can never be forgotten. After decades of footprints, fleeting glimpses, and undeniable encounters, the forest keeps its secrets. The question isn't whether Bigfoot exists, it's whether anyone can face what's out there and return unchanged. Will Michael Freeman uncover the truth? On Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, meet Mel Scan, an enrolled member at the accommodation and the storyteller behind this unbelievable encounter. Alongside his partner, Mel experienced something that defies explanation, a series of encounters so unusual it left them both stunned. DJ Gillian, who was also present, shared his first-hand account of the encounter, describing the moment with equal awe and excitement. Together, they invite viewers to witness this extraordinary experience, a story that challenges what we think we know about the unseen world.
My name's Mel Scahan, and I'm an enrolled member at the accommodation, and I have an event to share that happened to both me and my partner right here, and it blows my mind when you continue doing this and the type of communications that they want to have with you as you grow with them.
And I'm DJ Gian, and I was part of the encounter and love to share it with you.
As they ventured deeper, 3 of them were present: DJ, Mel, and a third companion. Mel had set strict instructions. If anything out of the ordinary occurred, they were to speak, no matter what. The person who experienced the phenomenon would recount it to the others, and any witnesses could confirm what they saw. There was to be no pointing, no chasing, only a steady, deliberate continuation of their investigation.
There were 3 of us, and DJ here was one of the 3. I was the second, and when we walked, I gave him the instructions. I said, if anything happens, just continue on with our normal voices, and the person that went through the experience just explained to everybody else what happened.
Their first sign of contact came in the form of a sudden wood knock. Moments later, a distant whistle pierced the air from the same direction off to their left, the very source of the initial wood knock.
And so the first communication that we had with them was a wood knock. And so I let them know what I had heard, and we're still walking. And I'm letting them know what I had heard and had asked if anybody else had heard it. And as we continued our walk, then a whistle was heard off in the same direction off to our left. And that was the direction that the wood knock came from as well.
Realizing that something unseen was closely monitoring their every move, they could make out part of the figure hidden behind a tree. Only the left side was visible. Every movement seemed deliberate, almost calculating, as the group held their breath. DJ stood frozen, awestruck by the advanced technology that allowed them to capture this encounter. In that moment, it was clear they were witnessing something far beyond the ordinary.
We're looking at it, and then you could see the head. You could tell it was standing. Part of him was standing behind a tree because we only saw the left side. We saw the head, saw the shoulders, and then saw the hand wrapped around the tree. And so we're looking and looking, and then DJ is like just floored by the technology that we had at that time to be able to have this event.
That night was unlike anything they had ever experienced. Mel saw the figure for the first time, completely alone. DJ, stepping into the dark forest for the very first time, felt every shadow and sound magnified, as if the woods themselves were alive. What unfolded that night would change everything they thought they knew, and it had only just begun. That night, the team split into groups for a bold night hike. Some stayed at camp, while others, including Mel, ventured into the forest to sit quietly, listening for anything unusual. They found a small clearing, surrounded by shadows and the sounds of the night, every rustle and whisper amplifying the tension. At that moment, the forest seemed alive, and they had no idea what was watching them. As they moved deeper into the woods, a sharp, human-like whistle cut through the night. Mel confirmed. Someone else heard it too. The group realized they were being watched. Every shadow and sound now alive with tension. They're just urging them to keep moving, hearts racing with the unknown lurking around them.
And I hear loud, human, pursed lip whistle off to my left-hand side, clear as a bell, exactly what it was. I said, Mel, he goes, yes, whistle off to the left-hand side. I'm like, yes, somebody else heard it. Yeah, and I heard it. And he says, yeah, they're just checking us out. They're letting it know that we're here. Let's keep going.
As DJ swept the thermal scope across the clearing, a sudden burst of heat lit up the screen. Bright, almost unnaturally vibrant. Slowly, the outline became unmistakable. Every detail stood out against the night, the faint glow of eyes. In that moment, it was clear, something intelligent, something alive, was watching them from the shadows. He had never been one for mystical trinkets or rituals, but the encounter opened his mind to something far stranger. The possibility that these beings possess abilities beyond human comprehension, senses and powers we can't begin to imagine. Could there be forces in the world that operate just beyond our understanding? And if so, what else might be watching, silently, just out of sight? Small Town Monsters brings the chilling story of Suzanne Ferrick from Western Holmes County, Ohio. In the dead of night, after weeks trapped inside by a bone-freezing cold, she stepped into the darkness. Bigfoot activity had shadowed her land for years, growing more intense, more haunting. And that night, she hoped to face it, if only for a fleeting moment. The channel is known for uncovering cryptids, folklore, and unexplained phenomena, blending careful research with stories that keep viewers on the edge of their seats.
I was in my house, kind of stuck in the house after a couple weeks because it was so cold, and I just had to get out. So at like 11:30 at night, I went outside, and it was 5 degrees and dropping, and I just decided for as long as I could stay out there, I was going to listen to some music, and of course I always had the recorder hanging because the Bigfoot activity had been so fierce for the past couple years before that.
Later that night, the quiet of the snow-covered field was shattered by a presence she could feel before she could see it. From the base of the power line, a massive figure emerged in the deep snow. It wasn't an animal she recognized, nothing that belonged in that forest. Slowly, it shifted, a deliberate, haunting motion that seemed to echo through the still night. Then, without warning, a deafening sound echoed from the hillside nearby, shattering the stillness. The snow, the darkness, the towering presence, it all seemed alive, watching, waiting.
And then all of a sudden I look over, and at the bottom of the power line, 100 feet from our house, was a Sasquatch, right like this, looking right at me. And there was no trees next to it or anything. The snow was, probably a foot deep at that point, and it was just a complete outline of a Sasquatch, and it was doing this.
In that frozen moment, the world held its breath, and the terrifying reality of what lurked there became undeniable. A story told by Thomas Shea. One night, a worker at the train yard saw it, an enormous, large figure, step off a boxcar into the glowing yard. Every detail was visible, every movement deliberate. In that instant, the ordinary world vanished, and the impossible became real.
They don't want to be put on TV or nothing, but there was one. We have a train that comes through here, and we got a train yard, like where they drop off boxes. And there's this one gentleman, he was working one night, and he said the train had just come in and dropped off some box cars and some cattle cars and stuff. It was empty. So he thought, he goes, he saw this figure come out. And he said, and it was all hairy. He goes, there was light there in this yard. He goes, I saw it clearly. It was hairy. It was at least 8 foot tall.
Ray Gardner shared a theory about the strange sightings that continue to puzzle the region. While not familiar with famous cases, he noted countless reports of creatures suddenly crossing roads or appearing in remote areas. Gardner believes these movements follow ancient patterns. In his view, these beings move almost instinctively, guided by generations of memory, haunting the same routes, unseen, yet ever present. It's as if the land itself remembers them, and they are simply following what has always been theirs. One witness refused to call it a Bigfoot, but he knew exactly what it wasn't. The sighting gripped him so strongly that he was determined to follow it. Then, in a shocking moment, he saw it cross the clearing, 2 massive legs covering the ground in deliberate steps, before vanishing into the shadows, leaving only a haunting question: what had he just seen? Drivers would round a dark, silent curve and freeze. There, in the middle of the road, lay a large figure, motionless under the faint glow of the asphalt. The air felt heavier, the night somehow darker, as if the ordinary world had vanished. Heat, instinct, or something far stranger. No one could be sure what it was doing there. Ray described how these creatures often follow the path of least resistance. They navigate with an almost uncanny awareness, blending into shadows while the world continues, unaware of their presence. And if they can glide through the world so silently, so deliberately, right beneath our very eyes, what other secrets might be lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting, and unseen? 7 encounters, 7 glimpses of the unknown, each leaving questions that linger long after the shadows fade. From silent watchers to fleeting figures in the mist, these stories remind us that the line between legend and reality is thinner than we think. The wilderness keeps its secrets, and sometimes all it asks is that we remain aware and watchful.